Now we're live.
There we go.
What's up, guys? Welcome. Another
Exposure
episode.
with light. Welcome back.
That's right. Welcome back. We're coming right back in. Thank you for everybody that's joining us for another week of the Good Life. Man, we need some sound.
We need a soundboard.
No, we totally do. We need a soundboard. Somebody's got to work on that because that's how we get our game to the next level. Guys, do you know that this is our 19th episode? Like next week is our 20th episode. Next week is our 20th episode of The Good Life. How crazy is that?
That is pretty wild, man.
Pretty nuts.
That is pretty wild.
It's been amazing. That's right. We just keep going.
I guess I got hope in my mind today.
We've been having some quality. Too much. We've been having some quality conversations, and we're coming back this week to have another one. So again, those of you that are following us on Facebook or YouTube, go ahead and press the thumbs up. Thanks for everyone that's watching us on LinkedIn and Instagram. Again, we're here to talk about have these thoughtful conversations around health, wealth, love, and happiness. And today we just had a little pregame over on Instagram, right? If you guys aren't following us, get over on Instagram. We're doing some pregame stuff over there for an hour before, but now we're here. And now it's time for the show. Kobi, jump in, brother. Tell us, what are we talking about today?
Let's go. So today we're talking about kind of parenting, right? And as every week we kind of discuss what's on all of our minds, and we find kind of this fine line that goes through everything that we're doing today. Can I get an amen?
Amen. Amen.
And then we come through and really just chat about it and see if we can get some insight from each other, from the audience, some questions, and we dive in deep, and we just kind of, man, this is like therapy for us. It's educational therapy when we come out, and we drop gems along the way, and hopefully you pick them up. And a lot of times we have you guys come in and drop some gems for us that gets us our brain thinking. Today we're talking about parenting. And handing things off to our children. Parents mean really well. They want to protect. They want to guard. They want to nourish. They want to grow. They want to provide the absolute best. But I think the question sometimes comes into what has that parent been exposed to that they view as the best that they're trying to provide? Because if you're giving your kid, cough medicine and you believe that's the best thing for them and you're chugging it down their throat, by all letter of law, you're doing good. But what if you find out that kid is allergic to that type of medicine? That's why they were turning their face so aggressively the whole time. Or maybe you're feeding them some sort of food, some sweet potatoes or something, and they just don't want it. They just keep moving their head. You're like, this kid is so stubborn. They don't want the good stuff, right? And then you find out that that's not really good for them, right? Mm-hmm. So again, we're talking a lot about that. And for me, the three areas that I could definitely speak to quite a bit as to how I wish I was exposed to in terms of what is outside of the normal box, right? What is okay? We have this box we want to keep our children in. What is okay outside of the normal box? For me, number one comes in this whole race thing. It took me quite a while to get freedom around that because I think we're all born into this created paradigm that has such a long history, that's so entangled in every aspect of society. When I think about like chalk, right? It's as if we start out with this bigger pieces, and over time it gets smashed into powder and sprinkled in the air, and it covers everything like pollen in Georgia in the South. Golly, and then we really pass on our hurt, we pass on our assumptions, our things to our children, and then money. Right, we spend so much of our time, our energy chasing money. The truth around money, how it influences things, how to manifest it, how to create value in the world so that you are attracted. What is it even, right? A lot of folks don't even agree on what it actually is. Like, what is money? What qualifies as money? And what is money? Money, we chase money. What does money chase? So that we can get behind that thing that money chases, right? So money chase. And so I also look at that and I say, for me, I think the one we can't miss is health. because we for sure I'm not a parent. I'm not a parent. But we parents really, by all means, will pass down their habits, right? And in a lot of ways, I'll tell you that you are passing on your genetics and your DNA through your habits that you pass on, right? And we'll start the show kind of, a point that Chris made where we hit a bit earlier that we didn't quite realize. Whereas, how do you feel, before we dive into maybe these three areas, how do you feel about having offsprings at all, and then also having offsprings that carry your specific DNA? How does that matter to you? So we kind of hit on that. So we'll touch on that briefly, and then hop into maybe some of these three areas, plus any other areas that these fine gentlemen want to bring up.
Absolutely.
Let's do this.
Absolutely. And before we move forward, I want to address Kemi, who's in the comments right here on Instagram, saying that her son, right? her son loves to buy sneakers, but instead she schooled him on how to buy fractions of Nike stock instead, right? Just where to put that money. And those are the things that we start to talk about, and we will continue to touch on when it comes to how do we get people out of the box or not get put in the box of how they think about money, of how they think about consumer spending and all that type of stuff. So thank you for that, Kemi. I appreciate it. And yeah, let's dive in to that question. That question that you just asked could be as far as, I am a parent. Let's just say that.
This guy.
I am a parent. Have a young daughter. She's 4, and we have these conversations a bit about how to keep them out of this social construct, this civilization, this box that we tend to put them in, right? The matrix. And we'll dive into that a little bit more. But what and again, a little controversial, a little bit, me and my wife have still debate on this and go back and forth. But would I want offspring that's not my DNA? So
before you hit that real quick, fellas, we are international. We are being hit from the great country of Ghana. And shout out. All right. Your wife and you on having kids with DNA. We are international, folks.
We are international. The good life has gone international.
On the 20th episode.
There you do it.
Here we go. Coming up. So, hey, so the short answer to that, the short answer to would I want children that's not my DNA. The short answer is no. No, I don't. Right. And not for any of the reasons of we can't give that child love, that we can't nurture that child into becoming something that's, beyond, their circumstance or how they were born in, that, right? None of those things actually matter. This is my thoughts on it at this age, right? Because thoughts change, we evolve. But where I'm at right now is I know too much about the passing down of DNA, the passing down of traumas, the passing down of things in a bloodline that we actually don't have control over. And so many of us are already trying to figure out our own personal, right? Our own personal, histories and stories, and what was our grandparents and great grandparents. And we're figuring that stuff out now because we're realizing that had a lot to do with who we are today. And even though you can nurture a child, you can get them as soon as they're born, whatever the case is, that DNA that's inside of their body could potentially change the outcome of their life, not by anything we do or choose to do, but by their lineage, by their great grandparents, by their parent, by their actual parents, by their grandparents. And to not have control over that, right? And this is me, right? I'm talking to you guys about how I think of this process. For me to not have control enough to say, I've done everything that I felt like I could humanly do to raise this child in the right way, and they still go this way because of DNA, because of things passed down, because of all types of things that actually we just took on by bringing them into the fold. I don't know that I want to relinquish that control just yet. I don't know that that's how I would look at this. Like, I don't know that I would say that, I could have a bunch of kids and then be so invested in their life and their well-being that like there's a part of them that that doesn't even come from me. That isn't even right, has a different blood type, a different bloodline, different traumas, different anxiety, different things that have happened to them that gets passed down, right? There's that old, what was it? It was a study that said like descendants of the Holocaust, like 2 generations later, their DNA was changed because of what their grandparents had gone through in the Holocaust. Like the actual structure of their DNA had changed, like the actual like cells. Like, and I'm not familiar of exactly what the study was, but to that point, if that is the case, can't roll the dice. I don't want to roll the dice to understand. I'd rather just search for us and search and figure out like this side without having to throw that in the pot. So that's my thoughts on that, guys.
I think that's interesting. And it's probably going to take me some time to download, digest, process what it is, and as to look at all the perspectives and the side of which you're coming from. But I in just listening to you, though, I think I want to speak to maybe 2 things. And first, foremost, starting off by saying I don't feel that way. I don't, because one, I think one assumption in what you're saying, or a key piece of what you're saying, is that you have any sort of control. I don't think you do.
we have control, like to the point of like, meaning control that like I know that this human came from my sperm and my wife's egg. So if I want to trace anything back, I got 2 like concrete places that I can trace back, and there's no mystery. Like, that is what I mean by controlling. Like, I don't know that we can control the outcomes, right? Sure. But like that part of it,
you have control in terms of like you chose that, sure, or you chose to do that. But I don't even think you can really even trace like that the way you just said. But I don't want to say there's no validity whatsoever. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I question that assumption. I don't believe that assumption is true. And I'll say this as well. I think there's also an assumption of like that there's what if the set of DNA or whatnot is not yours, is superior to yours? Because in what you're saying, there is an assumption of order and ranking, or better or worse or something there. What if it is superior? Then shoot, let me get some of that LeBron, that Sue Bird combo right there. Can I get a LeBron Sue Bird combo? We're talking 9 championships, baby.
They are making babies in labs these days, so you might be able to put together that combination.
Right. The winning combination.
And so I just don't think that's necessarily true. But I also, more importantly, I think what I push against is this assumption that is what you should do, and that's not coming from you. That's not what you said. You said this is what I choose, right? But there is what I push back is societally. There's an assumption of that is what I should do. And I think that's just kind of nonsense in a way, like that and I think I also push back with the pressure around it, coming from our parents and family and whatnot. And it's, that they mean well, again, as we will diverge a bit here into the conversation of parents, and they mean well, but I guess I'm more so the type as well too that I'd like to test out somebody else's bucket of issues. So I know mine. I go, all right, mine's interesting. That's cool. And don't get me wrong. I think
up for the challenge.
I think 100% get me in here. Listen. I will bet some good money on that bloodline right there. I tell you, I will bet some good money on that bloodline. But I think it's that type of thinking that's led us to live in the type of matrix that we live in. where we have individuals who year after year are saying, you know, my bloodline and this, and if you're not of this, then you are of lesser. I think we have so much of that in the world that I'm curious I would be down to try something else. All right. Hey guys, we must be doing something good, because I see a lot of the same brothers and sisters popping in here and listening to us here on the good old Instagram.
Ragnors, what's up, buddy?
I believe that's Alan. Shout out Alan. Good to see you. Shout out Sarah. Woo. Okay, cool. And I think, you know, in thinking about that, that's what leads me to where people are like, you know, I have to have my kid and my offspring by this age. And it's the level of pressure surrounding it. And I'll say, especially for women, right? Especially for women, the type of pressure that's put on them, where you can be in a situation where a woman is perhaps not able to have offsprings, and they have so much pressure to produce of their own. I think that's crazy. Yeah. I think that's crazy, and that's going on to a wild level in you know, in this culture, and also many cultures around the world. Yeah. I watched this thing the other day where this lady was under so much pressure. I will say it was a reality TV show that I was bonding with my partner over. I didn't pick it. It wasn't my night. It wasn't my night. I didn't choose it, but I was doing it. What I was just saying, but it was a while ago, and there was so much pressure from her in-laws to produce an heir, and I was like, where does this stuff come from? First and foremost, personally, I'm sitting here judging pretty hard. I'm like, if I were y'all and y'all levels of health, because they all had health issues, I would choose a different bucket, because clearly the bucket y'all are in isn't going well, right? Yeah. So, and there's something to say about not married, you know, I'm not saying we do this, but not having babies with your cousin. You know, you get issues when you stay right there. You intensify things when you stay right there. So I got a lot of random thoughts.
Back to my point. We don't know that happens from that adopted child's grandparents. We don't know if they're a cousin like that.
Yeah, but we don't know here either. That's what I'm kind of saying. I don't think we know either way.
I feel like it's easier to. I feel like you could ask. I feel like you could go back. I feel like you could ask grandpa, ask mom.
But will they tell the truth?
I don't know.
Well, do they even know? Are they even aware of
the gardener the whole time?
Are they even aware of this truth? You know. But true. I think, you know, again, I don't think you're in what you're saying is invalid. You know, I personally just feel like what surrounds it more so is what I push back against. The pressure, the assumption that this is better, this sort of elitist type of thought process that goes on around it historically, that kind of turns me off. You know, it turns me off. It doesn't mean I don't.
The pure bloodline type.
Yeah, shit? That turns me off, man. Yeah. It really turns me off, because I just don't. I don't know. It's caused so many issues, and two, I don't know. What has it solved? What is it? What has it brought us? You know, it might. Listen, royal bloodline, y'all might benefit from getting something else in there, because you guys been acting foolish for a while now. You know, if I'm gonna keep it PG for
all of our social media,
you know, keep it PG for IG. Yeah.
Now we have to worry about YouTube. We have to worry about all these channels now. Yeah. So it's all good.
We're coming at it from every angle.
So how do you feel on this before we hop into the different areas? Because I do want to dive in a little bit on those. For sure.
So for me on this one, I could go either way. I definitely want to have at least one. I definitely do not want to have just an only child, though. I went through that. I'm not doing that for my kid.
Why not? This is another thing. I'm totally okay with this. I'm totally okay with having an only child. But why not, Stu?
Well, I've experienced it.
So have I. I'm an only child.
What?
Yes.
Have we talked about this? Have we talked about this?
Probably at some point.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know this. Okay. Let's talk offline. Okay. All right. But first. Okay, so for me, I definitely want to have some kids that are my DNA. I want to know. I want to see what that looks like. I want to be a part of the reproduction system of humanity in that aspect. I want to pass down my knowledge. I want to pass down my health. I want to pass down really, like, I've been very fortunate. I don't have a whole lot of health issues, and that hasn't necessarily been very common. I would like to be a part of that and continue with that. And then as far as the adoption side of things, man, like, if I have the financial comfort or the opportunity, or I wouldn't be opposed to it. I've been in relationships with people that have had kids, and it works. It's fine. Like, the kid doesn't know any better when he's 2 years old. So, I mean, I could go either way on this one. I'm pretty open-minded about it. But when it comes to the number of kids, I'm going to have more than one, probably 3 kids. Talk about this a lot. 5, I love it. 7.
Trying to have a whole team over here? 7?
Yeah, almost the whole, like, basketball team. Where, like,
yeah, LaVar Ball 3.0.
Yeah. So for me, there are a lot of things that I enjoyed about being the only child. Didn't have to share. That was pretty great. I had my dog. I had my video games. I had my house. I had my parents. I had my woods. Like, I had a lot of stuff. It was awesome. One thing I didn't have, though, was confrontation. I had to learn confrontation years and years later down the line, because I didn't have that growing up. I didn't have to share and tug of war and, like, deal with things about jealousy because my parents are looking at another child and raising somebody else and attention's not going to me. I had to learn all these things and really, really humble the heck out of my ego. I actually attribute a lot of my confidence to the fact that my ego went completely unchecked and unwild like a stallion for a large part of my childhood. And then all of a sudden, things were different when I was in school. And it was like, oh, wow, everybody else here has been dealing with social situations for 5 years longer than I have. So it was pretty interesting in that aspect.
Stu, can I ask you a question, man?
Yeah, what's up?
How many friends did you have that you remember before going to school, before stepping into school?
Before, like, age 5?
Yeah, before, like, 5, 6, like, any friends?
I don't think so, bro. I was out in the country, middle of nowhere. Wasn't like that. Yeah, and that's why I think I actually became such an extrovert, because as soon as I got into preschool, dude, I was, like, bouncing around. I remember the preschooler telling my parents, like, this guy, he's always talking to people. He's always making new friends. It's, like, literally all he does. And so, yeah, there are pros and cons, but I would really like to see potentially a son, potentially a daughter, and, have my kids kind of grow up around each other. I will say, biggest pro, independence. Maybe too much so, because that's probably why I didn't do well working for other people. But, like, there are some pros and cons from it. But yeah, John, or Kobi, would love to. We're talking childhood, so I went straight back to my childhood. That's my excuse. I'm going to use that one just for a moment. But Kobi, where did you want to transition after this? Unless you guys have some questions about the only child or anything else I said there.
Yeah. No questions for me. Did you, Chris?
No questions. But yeah, we got to talk about the only child thing, man. I think pros and cons to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Think more that, like, I think that we have the ability to adapt very well. I don't know. We'll talk about that offline.
Yeah.
Right.
And, well, I guess I'm kind of in the middle of a bit, because there's about, there's me, my sister, and my brothers, 3 brothers. So oldest of 5. But I was an only child for my first 8-9 years of life.
Oh, wow.
Right? So I had that experience. And so I got that side, and then I got the side of, like, being a sibling and being in that group. And I'll tell you what, man, I think it's what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. I think it's like, I think that's where I stand on that. And to pivot to the bigger conversation of parenting and kind of what you pass on. Well, again, I highlighted 3 areas for me, which is race, money, and health.
Real quick, before we do that, though, I'm dying out of curiosity. Would you have an only child?
I wouldn't say necessarily no, but I don't think that's necessarily my preference. I kind of I couldn't tell you exactly why, but I kind of want none or a lot. I want none, or I want to be all in. I'm talking, I need a team, bro. I need to be able to sub in folks at, you know, okay. Kwabena, you're not playing well today. Our coach going. You know, so I like the idea of having a lot, because I don't know. I like, you know, I think the family culture stands stronger at one or the other. I think the family culture is kind of weak with one or even two, honestly. Personally, yeah.
You know, now as you say 0 or 8, it did make me realize I have
not 8. I didn't say 8. Yo, relax. I didn't say 8. I said 0 or a lot.
You said 7. Sorry,
you said 7. So
yeah. I was kind of playing.
On the topic of 0, I am more open to the idea of not having kids. I still think it's a very high likelihood for me, but I am more open to it now.
Yeah. And
Chris, you don't have a choice. At this point. You got.
I don't have a choice.
LOL 8.
LOL 8.
Yeah, that's my cousin. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he threw up the Ghanaian flag too earlier.
Yeah.
What's up, Ramon? Thank you for joining, buddy. I don't know if you're still here or not, but I appreciate it.
But yeah, to dive in, right? Like we said, to transition into the topic today, it was really about parenting. And I know we kind of powwowed for a bit already, the first half of the show, to talk a little bit about just our preference when it comes down to childbearing and families and those things. But like you said, Kobi, we really wanted to have this conversation to talk more about those societal pressures and, again, getting out of the box or the information that gets passed down, how it has been some form of a box or keeping us in some form of a box in those 3 areas. You said race, money, and health. So from a parenting aspect, how, man, our parents have a huge influence, if not the sole influence, over how we start to understand those 3 areas. You guys would agree with that, right? Like that's definitely the case. So Kobi, tell me where you want to start on those 3, because we can start at any of them.
Really, we can. And then as I'm thinking right now, I'm like, shoot, we could throw in faith right in there, faith and religion right in there, right? But we'll see if we have time, if we need to do a part 2. But me and race is just because that was so, and I think a lot of this is individual, right? Where you come from, what you see, what your experience kind of is, et cetera. Like I went from a place where most, if not everyone, kind of looked like me, where there was no real, where the racial climate was very different, to a place where I had to quickly learn what it was, how it was treated, where I fit in, et cetera. And I think it's such a hot topic, especially in the US, that I think providing a certain level of understanding to children is really helpful here. But I think parents are not really set up to do so, right? Because we barely have the information ourselves. At this age, you barely have the true information, which, you know, I finally, and I'll give my experience here again, going through, I was kind of coming from Ghana. I was kind of like, you know, I'll say the people, I'll say it this way, the people that look like me were like, you're not of us. Right. You are of the click, click, clack folks. You're not us. Right. And so they would grill in on me. When you see Chris is laughing because he knows, man, kids are ruthless. They would go in on me. Whether it's I bring different food, whether it's I pronounce different words wrong, whether it's this skin tone, like they'll just go in. All right. And then there was the folks on this side who definitely didn't look like me, who were all like, oh my goodness, you're different. Right. So it was more of like a passive sort of like approach of like difference. Right. But I didn't fit in either. So I kind of had to figure out where it is you fit. And I think helping provide, and Chris, maybe this is kind of what you're speaking to when you say your DNA, helping your kids kind of find their identity in a way is really important. But see, I reject the whole kit and caboodle to begin with, because we're supposed to, if we travel the world, we see people that go from me to look like me to maybe, for this example's sake, look like Stu. But we also find people all the way across that stage, right? Yeah. But yet we are supposed to take all of these individuals and fit them into, like, according to the census, like 5 to 8 clean boxes. It just doesn't make any sense. And based on what box you choose, you're afforded a whole set of risks, a whole set of privileges or a whole set of stereotypes, or a whole set of, it's just such a hot thing, but it's all made up. It's all completely actually made up. And so, you know, when I say pass it on to my kid, I think one of the things, if you've never seen this, guys, I would definitely do that, and do it with your family if you can. Race the Power of an Illusion. That kind of walks us through this, and they take a look at mitochondrial DNA. They take a look at like our historical backgrounds and the different theories. And what we realize is that all these boxes are just, they were really constructed to hoard power within this particular group and make the other groups basically work for the other group. Like, you know, so it's like there's very little truth to it besides what we agree and treat as a whole. And when I say that, I also mean like what we actually accept, right? So the fact, if you call me green and I accept that green is my identification, I operate differently, right? I think the acceptance of the boxes in and of itself is part of the problem, right? So, you know,
how do you help that kid cope then, right? Because and Stu, I'm curious to hear your perspective on it. Just right, being a white male.
I love this topic.
Yeah, like growing up, like how you know, we get the talk. Could be saying like, hey, right, you realize very quickly that you're not like other people until you take that home and start to be like, hey, why am I not like other people type thing. But like, how do you prepare a child for that, to be like, you are you, and that's who you are? And
I think you prepare yourself first and foremost. You know, I think as parents, a lot of parents are trying to teach things they don't know, right? So I think you prepare yourself first and foremost, and I'll let Stu jump in here.
Yeah, I mean, prepare yourself is absolutely phenomenal, because for me, I just relate that to self-awareness, emotional intelligence. There's so many different things, like just general knowledge of how life works, actually getting out there and experiencing new things and trying new things. Like, it blows my mind that not everybody likes to try new things like necessarily as much as I do. And for me, like, I want to know everything under the sun, so that way if my kid wants to try something, like, I'll be able to actually help facilitate him trying that. But when it comes to the topic of race, this may shock some of you guys. I am white, but like, I did have to always, I know, right? Isn't it crazy? I did always have to. I didn't realize this
before I agreed. No, I'm just like, go ahead.
Well, I always had to check the box I'm white on like every single SAT, and everybody else had all these cool cultural backgrounds to pick from. This is the thoughts of a kid, man. I was like, everybody else gets to say they're this or that, but I'm always, it just says here, right at the top, just says white. And it just say it, and it's like, white, blank, was that boring? Like, do I not have any type of cultural thing that I can think of? I mean, I can think about like with you know, if I were to say Hispanic, I could think of all different types of music. I could think of different types of food. You know, black, different types of music, different types of dance. That goes for Hispanic too. I got sucked right into Spanish dance. But with white, I didn't necessarily feel like I had a cultural identity. It was very odd. It's very odd knowing that everyone else had these like stories, and I was like, okay, well, you know, given my background and how here I am, maybe I'm like a Viking, so cool. Like, I used to pillage people. Like, well, I don't have anything right now. Like, so it was always pretty uncomfortable. And for me, I've always been the type, like I said, since preschool, to like hop around and get to know different people, and to always have all these assumptions of a negative variety because of the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, pale-skinned. Shit was hard growing up, because I would always put myself out there, but I'd feel such negative vibes from people if I didn't know them at first. Not everybody. I really cannot emphasize that enough. And a lot of it may have just made me worried about it and projecting it. It's tough to tell. When you're a kid, you're not thinking like that. So
did you have to have these conversations with your parents? Like,
we did talk about race a lot, because I don't know. I always brought different looking friends home. Didn't matter. So like, they were always super supportive of that. And really, like, when it came to the topic of race, the only thing that was ever discussed in my house is like, no matter who you are on this planet, you're no better than anybody else. Like, so like, to me, like, race was just inherently implied in that overarching statement. So, and
that's just crazy. This is such a crazy conversation, And I love it because just what you said, the opposite is true for us, is that our parents had to build us to let us know that we were somebody. Right? Like your parents told you that like you're not better than anyone. So you're like, I got it. But I had to learn like you're just as good as them. Like you like society looks like differently at me. So I had to come in with or my mom had to give me the message of like, no, like you're just as good as them, right? Like no one, like you're not below anyone, right? It's just crazy how we have those things that are completely different just because of how we grew up, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't think I think once you understand how the system works, you realize it's not that crazy. It's actually very predictable.
Sure.
Right. It's actually very, very predictable. And that's part of kind of the problem when I say, how do you really pass this on, is I think you yourself have to understand, how was this created? Because we're led to believe it's innate, it's natural.
Right.
It's not. It's neither of those things. It's not innate, nor is it natural. Right. It was actually systematically through media, to go back to our previous topic that we talked about on a few episodes ago. Media in the forms of books, in the forms of actual current, like a newspaper, in the form of legal terminology and laws, in the terms of medical classifications, in the term of religious interpretations, right? That's how this stuff was pushed out and kind of seeped out into society that way, right? Because what do you have to do? You have to have teachers who accept this set of information as true to teach as true, right? It was innate, and I say this because I literally been in the classroom teaching this stuff, right? I've also been in the classroom on the student side of things, learning this stuff. And it's just treated as kind of like this, kind of the way, humans discovered this about themselves. We didn't freaking discover this about ourselves. We were told this to be true, right? You have to have certain religious leaders that'll get up there and use justification from their religion to back up what was created, which again, you can justify pretty much anything from that standpoint if you really want to, right?
I justify this because I was taught this.
Right. And I think really highlighting how it is that this ideology, this construction gets out to the public. How is it disseminated, right? And then we begin as good little, figurine, good little people in this thing. We accept it as true. I am fill in the blank. We do this. And we all do a certain level of that. But I think being aware of what are the words that you're using, what are the assumptions behind those words, what are the boxes that we're all checking. I think really, I always say this, as long as we are playing this game of race, the game of race is designed so that black always loses. That's the way it is. So if you're playing the game of race, my friend, you're not going to get a different result, right? You may have some exceptional, you may have some, I got you real quick. You may have some stories of victory within those, but those are exceptions. There are exceptions to the game of race. So I think, it's passing that ideology and that clarification on that. Why would you continue to play that game if you already know the outcome? What's your question?
When you said it's always black, is that just in like the Western world, or is that everywhere? Like, what is
that's the paradigm that we're talking about, right? This construction of race of what we're talking about is that very paradigm. So that paradigm was pushed from the West to others. Go ahead.
Interesting. Well, because you also hear about racism in countries like China, about towards other races. So I'm just curious, like, are there parts in the world where the majority is not white, so consequently there may be an altered narrative? You know what I mean by that?
Two ways to answer that question. In a zoomed in perspective, I would say you got to look at one. The game of is still the same, whether the categories change or not. Absolutely. It's still kind of the same, right? I think on a zoomed out perspective, you got to look at the the flavor that we're talking about, the paradigm that we're talking about. Now, you could have a hierarchy for anything like this, but the paradigm that we're talking about is a Western construction being pushed out to the other parts of the world that then accept them to be true. So I spent a couple of summers teaching students from English from like Taiwan, China, all different parts of Asia and South America, etc., and some in the Middle East, etc. And I paid attention to kind of how they related to me, and it was all like it was same, but different, right? So it was slightly different, but it was kind of the same. Right. So where did they get a lot of these ideologies where it was kind of the same? Is a lot of them got it through Hollywood. Like straight up, if I'm being very, very specific, a lot of them got it through Hollywood. And it seeped into their some of their education as well. Right. So then that's why we got to look at how did these things come to be? How did we come to actually construct them the way we did? Who's pushing out these? How is this stuff getting out?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I remember you and I were, I don't know if we were in the same class, but we took the same class in like, you know, world history or something like that. And
Hamill Jones.
Yeah.
Was that the one? No.
Yep.
All right.
And it was. And we were taught from our world history book that that there were 3 different types of humans. There was Caucasoid, Mongoloid, and Negroid. And I never, as a kid, I was like, okay, I mean, you're the teacher. I'm just reading this book, and yeah, I do see people that look different than me. But looking back, it's like they're not different types of people.
You just take that as fact.
Like,
that's kind of what it is. Like, oh, okay, yeah, memorize that and move on.
Yeah. So like,
how silly is that?
Out of 7 billion, there's 3 types. Like, why? Like, I don't like. People are just different. I know.
This was in a textbook, guys. This was in a textbook.
Series? Absolutely, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, like, absolutely.
This is why I'm keeping my daughter out of all forms of formal education like this. This is ridiculous.
It's absurd. It's never. And see, simple piece here. See, this is, you know, what I would do differently, and not necessarily solves the problem, but it provides some level of thinking. It's like, this is what they are telling you to be true. I'm not saying that this is necessarily true. I think just even putting that little barrier in for the kid allows them to think about it a little differently, right? Where a kid can watch a Disney story and have a certain level of separation, right? And know that certain things are true, like, you know, but we just present it here as like straight fact.
Yeah, but they don't, like, in what's crazy.
I don't think they separate it in Disney.
Yeah, they actually, it's a struggle, right? Right? I'm living this now because my daughter watches a ton of stuff and sees things, and her imagination goes, and I have to, I challenge myself on these, like, you know, because no one has a manual in parenting. No one understands, like, if this is the right thing. But I very often say to my daughter, that's not real. Like, I say that saying just like that, in that, like, monotone, like, she'll bring up something and I'll be like, that's not real. That's not real. And I'll just, like, tell her, like, just up front. And I don't know if, like, I'm shooting down her imagination, if I'm too far to like, if she's too young to, like, take in that, like, I'm trying to get her to understand the difference between, like, fake reality, like what's real and what's not. So I question that as a parent sometimes, like, am I doing the right thing by telling her, like, that's not real. Like, that's not really how it works. That's not this, right? Like, I feel like I'm shooting down her dreams sometimes, or just her imagination, and that plays with me. Go back to, like, why we started this conversation of, like, the parents, we're figuring it out. So it's really hard for us to give the proper information, or, right, like, what we want, if we're still trying to figure out, like, is that the right move? Like, should we explain it that way? Should we not? Is that the right thing? Is that going to help her now or not? Like, so this whole parenting thing is so uncertain that, like, you know, we might know things to be true, but it's still a struggle to pass it down, or because we don't know if we're doing the right things. If that makes sense, you know?
Yeah, it does. It does. And, you know, I don't know if this is necessarily the right way to go, but I think kind of something that you said a little earlier, which is asking more questions, the Socratic method of getting, like, you know, what do you think? Like, if this were true, what would it be? If it were false, what would it be wrong? Yeah. If it were none of those, just kind of getting their brain to really cover as much of the areas as you can. And then the rest, listen, you better start praying, do something. The rest of it, you got to toss it up, in the interest of time here, I kind of want to shift from race a little bit here to the other topic.
We've been going for 45 minutes.
I think we should do a part 2 of this.
Yeah, this is crazy.
I feel like we barely scratched the surface here.
Yeah. I was thinking about it for a second. I was like, man, listen, I think what would be interesting, guys, is like of all three of us actually watch Race the Power of an Illusion and then chat about it.
How do I
think that would be really cool. It's like it's I don't know if it's a 3-part series. One is like called The House We Built or The House We Live In or something. But it's a PBS 3-part series. There's like a companionship workbook that goes with it. And this is why, if you're homeschooled, I think it's a great thing because you can literally do a whole chapter on it with your students or your children. There's like a different game. They've created like a little mini game series on the website that you can play with. I think we should go through that and actually chat about it, because it's one thing I've thought about for a long time. All these different things that institutions and powers, like how do you put things in place for parents to actually help their children get other forms of information or think about it a little differently. And I think this is one of those real tangible tools that I've always thought about. So I'd love to test it out with you guys if you're up for it.
That'd be great, man. And I got to be honest, like with how little time we have left, I think we could finish out on race and save the other 2 topics for the next time.
Yeah.
Make it 3 then. We can do money, health, and faith.
Yeah, I'm down because I actually just started exploring that website that is the host of that show you just mentioned, and it actually had a picture of a young black man who's holding like a little device to show like which skin color it is, and it's like, dude,
where do you fit?
This stuff does not matter biologically at all.
Race, the power of an illusion. Race, the power of an illusion.
To me, the most ironic, and I say ironic because obviously, like, there's the fact that the white race has not been exactly the best way to lead a nation in the past. I don't know how to phrase that exactly, but I'm just gonna put it right there. It's awkward for me to say. Anyways, the reason I say ironically is because fuck the sun when you don't have melanin, like. And I think it's so interesting that we're always out here. Yeah, like we're always. I live in Florida now. Like I really, really, really battle the sun when I go outside. Like I got a wide brim hat. I got a long sleeve shirt. I'm debating about chemicals and whether or not it's worth to put sunscreen on me or not. It's a whole thing. But we always there was this idea at one point that like the lighter you looked, it meant the less you worked outside. That was some narrative pushed around in Victorian England. And now
that's still alive and well.
Oh, of course. That was like where I heard about it at that time. But, now it's just like, you do realize that like, we are the ones not winning in the battle of evolution, right? Like we're the ones not surviving. Like I've thought about this. It's actually why for the most part, I haven't dated too many white girls, because I'm kind of thinking about, I would like my kids to have a little bit more chance of getting fun than I do. And it's not the only reason, obviously. There's tons of cultural differences too, but I'm serious. I've thought about that shit. It's like if you guys are right, which I can't even begin to try and agree with or not. You guys are right about the whole ozone layer and like just the ending of the world and just all this other stuff. You're telling me that by the time my kids are my age, it's going to be even worse for them? Well, we're doing something wrong. Anyways, that's my 2 cents. I think that's always a bitter irony, but
I do think that's really interesting to think about.
I'm a weird dude. We're thinking about weird things.
No, I think that's really interesting to think about, and I think kind of grounding, all three of us grounding ourselves in one specific work or set of materials will take this conversation to another level. Because then we can pull some specifics And yeah, I think that's very interesting. I always do look at that, and I think that being really interesting. If you are in that position where you realize you are, let me take it out of race for a second and put it in like male, female, right? If you realize biologically males, we are at a disadvantage. That's the truth. Really, biologically, sexually, reproductively speaking, we are at a disadvantage. I'll just use one quick example here, right? Men, you know, you go once and you're kind of dead, right? Women go, they go all. Hey, I'll see you go up against a woman, man. You will lose. That's the fact. They can go. Oh, I see what you're saying. My fault. I see what you're saying. But that's the thing. And so when you look at that, that's not. We are at a disadvantage. This book, you know, if you ever have the time, it's called The Tao of, I believe it's Sex, Health, and Longevity. And it speaks to this, right? And to the point where they refer to the male ejaculation as like a mini death, right? It's a mini series of deaths, right, that take place. So we're at a disadvantage. So as a result, when men gain more and more power and rule in this sort of superficial societal world that we live in, we feel the need to compensate by demonstrating more of our male masculinity and like putting symbols of penises everywhere, and you know, like just silly things. Yeah. We construct society and silly things with silly symbolism and things to like support that, because in truth we're very insecure about that, right? That's what it is. In truth, we're very insecure about that. And I remember learning the details of it and being like, golly, I mean, we really are at a disadvantage, right? So I think it's kind of a similar thing to the constructed game of race, right? I think you kind of, in a way, it was like, oh, we realized what Stu just said, and I'm not going to say it because he just said it, right? What Stu just said, and like, we've got to find a way of like overcoming that or overcompensating. I really think that piece of it is also true, right? It's like a huge overcompensation of like, if we don't put these people down, they're going to take over, like just naturally, right? Because in this realm that we live in, right, of how do we get our source of energy? It's from the sun. Right, we can take a lot more sun, and not only that, what else do we get? We get a farming and things like that, so we can be out longer and do all these things. Like that's not, and few people are dictating this of a very large people. Like that's a bad spot to be, strategically speaking. So what do you have to do? You have to colonize their minds and everybody else's mind, and put this system in place that always has them losing. Right, that always has them at the bottom of the structure, you know, bar them from education, bar them from borrowing money, bar them from starting their own banks, bar them from doing all this stuff. Why? So that you can maintain your position.
Make them political promises and then do
right. And nothing. That's even current, you know, but this thing is like, you know, and so I look at that, I'm like, there's a lot of truth to that. Right. There's a lot of truth to that. But that might be a
random day. No, randomly on the male ejaculation thing, I have heard that if you kind of do the research, like the 1,000 deaths, like people, if men go and like don't ejaculate for like months, like you have like superhuman strength.
Oh yeah,
you have like superpowers.
Yep.
Like for real, like it all just builds up in like mentally, physically, like you are on a completely different level. And I've read that that's the case as well. So
I've experienced that is the case as well. And I'm gonna tell you this is really interesting, because if you want to dive,
how long, man? Tell me.
minimum of like 11 days. Minimum of 11 days. You want to test it out, but the thing is, you want to go you want to go long in that as possible, but the actual apex of that, all right, to play a little bit, all right, the top of that is to experience orgasm without ejaculation.
Yeah, dude.
That's the top. That's the truth. If you can train yourself to that level of discipline, and that means you got to be physically well, mentally well, and spiritually well to do that. So And this guys, listen, this right here, this one topic is real deep. We could talk about it another day if we want to, but this is real deep. And that you can match the entire story of Christ as it relates to what you just said, Chris, to the anointing of the chakras, the crystals oil anointing your pineal gland and not being wasted through ejaculation. Like, it's a whole thing. Wow. Okay, so it's one that would take quite a bit to explain, and maybe we do that off before we bring it on. But I'm telling you, there's a ton of alignment to how that oil, because that's what it is, the crystals oil, how that oil travels through, right, and eventually is able to anoint your pineal gland if you don't waste it, if you don't just let it go, if you don't just ejaculate it away, right? And this is where we are at a biological disadvantage in the sense of, like, women don't have that particular issue. You see what I'm saying? So, and that's why they say 1,000 deaths, because you've that's why you've stolen a life force in a way, right? You've collected a life force in a way. And I'm being very careful with my words here, because this is one that took me some time to really wrap my head around. But it lines up with the story of, not only with the story of Jesus, but with the story of Horus and all predecessors that are pretty much like that before, that existed way before like that. It describes a healthy process of living. So it's really all about your health.
This is interesting, because right now in this men's group I'm a part of and in some other circles, like, we were really talking about like sexuality and having a healthy relationship with it. And if I could just jump in with one quick thing real quick for those that are listening, pornography is not the way to get to the good life. From everything that I've been exposed to and learned and done the trial and error in a bad way myself, like, for the love of God, like, reach out to somebody if you have trouble with that, because it is a fast track to draining all of your life force. Like, I didn't keep up with Kobi on a lot of it, but there is some shit there that firsthand I've experienced it. You don't want to go down that route and get stuck on that.
Yep, that's it. And again, we go to, this is why I thought you have to understand institutions and powers. That is an institution.
That's right.
Okay, you have to understand institutions and powers, and it relates back to the good life, your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health, all of that relates, right? I don't know about you guys, but as a male, when you discover, masturbation and whatnot, that first few, you feel it. Something has left your spirit, right? Something, you dropped something. Something did it feel? Sure, felt good, right? But you feel that, and we say, oh, it's making guys feel bad about it and shameful about it. Yes, but also it is a fall. Just like I talk about cooked foods being a fall from grace. This is also a fall for us, right? Because that first, there's a reason why you place emphasis on virginity. That first opens Pandora's box that you almost can never close. You can only manage from that point moving forward. You've started a clock that you can't unstart. There's a reason monks, right? They have their own thing going on, but like, there's a reason they're supposed to, right, and maintain that life force. Like, it's a real thing. And then that anointing of the crystals, that anointing of the pineal gland, is what leads us to our greatest selves.
There's a lot to this, guys. There's a lot to this.
There's a lot.
We've been rocking.
Let's start with that raise the power of illusion first, man. This is something I've like really thought about for quite a bit, and this might take us through the rest of the year if we go through this systematically.
That's it. So I have it down there for those of you that are watching on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube. We got it on the bottom right there. It shows Race the Power of an Illusion. This is something that we're going to dive into.
Three-part series.
Three-part series. We're going to dive into it a little bit on our end, and then start to come back and discuss it again here on The Good Life, we want to have these thoughtful conversations about elevating your life. Elevating your life, right? Like that's what this is about. We started, and again, you guys are starting to notice, those of you that are following us and hanging out with us on Instagram now, right? Like you're noticing that we're starting in one place and we're ending at a completely different place. These conversations can go so many different ways because there's so many keys and components to this gumbo, so to speak, of a good life, of all the things, right? It's just paying attention to them. And we want to bring that awareness to you. We want to make sure that you're aware of all of these areas so that if there was something that maybe we could say to you or that we could impart on you so that you go and do your own research, right? So that you open up that door for yourself to really start diving in and saying, hey, what areas do I need to change? What areas do I need to pay attention to? That's what we want to be able to do, because we know that's what will help you get to that good life, guys. So, man, have fun with you guys. This is like therapy for real. For real. This is awesome. Hopefully everybody that's listening is taking good stuff from it. And again, every Wednesday, join us on Instagram at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, because we're doing a pregame. We want to engage with you. We want to have a conversation. We want you to jump in and talk to us and tell us maybe what our topic should be. Maybe you should watch that race 3-part series, and then you can join in the conversation with us. Jump on an hour before on Instagram, and then we're going live on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube for the full show, 8 p.m., 5 p.m. Pacific, every single Wednesday. Next week is episode number 20, man. Should we throw like a party? Should we get like hats? We get like little.
Should we get like? Are there any 2020 glasses left?
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, buddy.
I have some more 2020 glasses around.
Yeah, I'll be down.
We'll figure it out. But either way, guys, until next week, we're signing off for The Good Life. Take care. Enjoy your week. We'll see you next time.